Today, the Brennan Center was in court to try to close what's known as the LLC loophole. As you may know, one person can create an unlimited number of limited liability corporations and then donate to a candidate from each LLC, essentially allowing them to exceed the limit for a single individual donor. There have been legislative proposals to change this system, but none have passed the full legislature, so the center has asked the State Board of Elections to act and then sued when the board voted not to. With us now to go over the latest developments is Dan Weiner of the Brennan Center. Dan, thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So this is an interesting case because you guys had actually brought this to the State Board of Elections a little while back, basically pointing to, I believe, a federal determination on campaign financing, that it's really got to be updating the state's laws to fit this federal criteria. When the State Board of Elections basically punted, you sued.
So, yeah, it's an interesting part of the case. The board, when it originally created the LLC loophole, said that it was following federal law, the practice of the Federal Election Commission. The Federal Election Commission came to its senses pretty quickly after it issued that original opinion and instead decided to treat LLCs like other artificial business entities. The board has decided not to. So that's not the only reason the board should change, but it is an important thing, is that the original decision was based on a federal precedent, and that federal precedent is gone.
And so when you brought this to the Board of Elections, basically what happened was they rejected this argument more or less. I mean, I think I remember they actually deadlocked on it. Is that correct?
Yeah, they deadlocked. So they voted 2-2, which under New York laws pretty clearly is tantamount to a rejection. Right.
So tell us a little bit about this court case. What are some of the arguments that you guys have brought to this, and just what step are you on right now?
Well, look, the most, I think, remarkable thing about this court case is that nobody, not any of the courts, not the board, not the interveners, the Republican Party, have actually defended the merits of the LLC loophole. I mean, the LLC loophole is clearly, has allowed, just in the 2014 cycle, LLCs gave $20 million, almost $20 million, which was more than quadruple what they gave in 2002. So allowed a huge amount of money to flood into the New York campaign finance system, quite a bit of it in secret, because it's easy to form an LLC and you don't need to disclose who you are.
It's usually an address,
right?
You can't really necessarily figure out who owns what.
One person gave $4.3 million in 2014 through dozens of LLCs, all happened to be, controlled by Glenwood Management, which New Yorkers should know was a pretty big player in both the silver and Skello scandals.
A very big player in New York real estate.
So the argument is simple. It's that, this cannot have been what the legislature intended when it passed the election law in 1974, and it's certainly not what the legislature intended when it created LLCs when the legislature passed the election law in 1974 and when it created LLCs in 1994, which it was doing, for business reasons, basically let people get some of the benefits of being a corporation, and also some of the benefits of being a partnership.
And to be clear, individual companies and corporations can donate to individual candidates now, but they've got much lower
they've got much lower limits, and it's pretty clear the legislature wanted that. Like there's very explicit language in the legislative history that the legislature did not want to let huge amounts of corporate money into the system. They wanted to let a small amount in because, frankly, they figured people would probably be giving anyway, and they wanted to put it over the table instead of under the table.
So the LLC loophole has been a major issue in Albany for at least the last decade, if not longer. Since that time, we've had the Citizens United decision. We've had the new era of the super PAC. We've seen independent expenditure committees come in to state Senate races. I would not be surprised if that Westchester County race down in the 37th district is going to have a lot of independent expenditure money, super PAC money coming into that. Why tackle the LLC loophole when you've also got the system of super PACs right now? They can't donate directly to a candidate, obviously, but you get rid of the LLC loophole, you whack that mole, but the other mole of the super PACs, they're still there.
Well, two reasons. The first is just a matter of transparency. I mean, one of the most pernicious things about the LLC loophole that does not, I think, get enough attention is how much of this money is being donated in secret. And actually, many super PACs do need to disclose their donors. There are issues with that. But so you are having a ton of secret money going directly to candidates, and That is not something that is required by Citizens United. Citizens United actually, forthrightly endorsed disclosure. It's actually transparency is one of the campaign finance rules the Supreme Court really backs. And the second thing I would say is also funneling money directly to a candidate is different than independent spending. It's not that this will solve every single problem, but to pretend that it doesn't matter, I think just there's no support for that. I think it makes a huge difference in New York politics. And if you close this, you really will go a long way towards sort of addressing the culture of corruption, as we can see by the role that LLCs played again in both Sheldon Silver and Dean Skelos' misconduct.
So Governor Cuomo last week, or was that 2 weeks ago now? Everything's running together for me now. It's been one of those weeks, folks. But Governor Cuomo, in his State of the State address, devoted a record short amount of time, I think, on tackling good government, public corruption issues, campaign finance reform. He mentioned that he wants to close the LLC loophole, once again, as he has done for the last 7 years. However, the very reason why you're bringing this case, I think it's fair to say, is because the legislature has not acted on this issue. Do you have any hope that this year will be any different for legislative action?
I think that the governor has been very forthright about wanting to close the LLC loophole before.
Well, in the past, he has disputed whether it's even a loophole to begin with, because he's said, and I'm quoting here, it's the law.
Right. Well, I think that it is the board gets to interpret the law, and they've created a loophole in the law, and we're asking them to fix it. I don't think it's consistent with the election law. But what I would say is the governor has made very clear his view on this. So has the attorney general. So have many other politicians in New York and office holders. They should close it. But regardless, this is a legal error that the board created. So while the legislature can and should do something, the legislature is not the only institution that can, which is why we are in the courts. But certainly would like to see the legislature act. That would be great. But in the absence of legislative action, the courts do need to step in.
And how much longer do you think this court battle, if you will, can go on? We were talking a little bit earlier about potentially this going to the state's highest court, the Court of Appeals. Do you think that's possible, and how much longer do you think that could take?
Look, anything is possible. I think that everyone would like the courts to resolve this as quickly as they can. We've obviously got the 2018 election cycle coming up. But it's a contentious case. It was a very robust argument today, lots of tough questions for both sides. So I think that the Third Department will hopefully make a decision, as speedily as they can, and then we'll take it from there. It's hard to predict right now. But, I think it would be in everyone's interest for this case to be decided well in advance of the 2018 election so that everyone can get on and hopefully with a more fair and just campaign finance system.
Just getting back to legislative action, should elected officials, candidates for office, take a pledge of some sort to maybe, unilaterally disarm on the LLC loophole and not accept LLC money? I know some candidates have said they would do that, but I think part of the reason why we continue to see the LLC loophole in place is because a number of these elected officials, including the governor, quite frankly, have benefited from this system, have taken LLC cash.
I'm not going to tell candidates how to run their campaigns. I'm a lawyer. I'm not a politician.
Well, many politicians are lawyers, but that's neither here nor there.
That is true. I am one of the non-politician lawyers. I think that what we need is a solution for this. Telling people to sort of voluntarily not take LLC contributions, that's nice. They have to make that decision for themselves, but that's not a solution to this problem. The solution is to fix the board's legal error.